the constantly unfolding horrors of Vasily Nikoleyevich. There lived in San Francisco a certain Vasily Nikoleyevich Rostov, whose horror regarding the current state of the world was well known and much discussed in the bars, music halls, and cafés of the Mission Prospekt. Vasily Nikoleyevich was a slight youth of pale complexion and bird-like demeanor. Thin, wiry black hair sprung from the vast plain of his forehead, making his entire head into a sort of exclamation point. His sunken eyes fiended upon whatever they happened to alight, at once desperately attracted to and repulsed by their subject. The financial district news kiosk at which he had worked shut down, as did so many other concerns, shortly after Wall Street's nosedive of September 2008. Since then, he had subsisted on minor pot sales, the odd bicycle repair gig, and his dwindling government dole. He had taken cellar rooms in a large Victorian on Shotwell Street, where he kept watch over a pile of brakeless bicycles belonging to the 7 other inhabitants of the house. If his febrile recoil from the world and its decline was the subject of much fascination in the Prospekt social scene, in his household it was the central fact of existence. From his subterranean rooms, Vasily Nikoleyevich's explosive fear reverberated upward and throughout the walls like the churnings of a runaway engine. Approximately twice a week, the door in the kitchen connecting to his underground dwelling would fling open, and toward the recycling bin, a volley of shredded paper would fly. The Economist, The Week, the New York Times, with articles scissored out of every other page. Then the door would slam in the footsteps of Vasily Nikoleyevich, would thunk back down the hollow wooden staircase. Any number of housemates who had heretofore been standing around mumbling and brushing fruit flies off last week's spill of espresso grounds would bare their clenching teeth to each other. There was print and, of course, the internet. Vasily Nikoleyevich's fingertips could not touch a laptop, but slammed down violently on each key with the full force of his body and youth. At 2 a.m., the neighbors across the street, staring at their ceilings, could make out individual keystrokes. The roommates felt subjected to a deafening ticker tape of hysteria. Of the informational arsenal that the young man stockpiled in his quarters, his favorites by far were the color cover photos of the New York Times. Always some faraway child awaiting treatment in a field hospital. Always some sensuously glowing car bomb or petrol explosion. Some tangle of corpses miraculously lit from behind by a gorgeous sepulchral light. Tragic, biblical, a view through some lens of compassion, inseparable from the theater of catastrophe. These photos seemed to him the last thing remaining in the world resembling purity. He taped the photos one by one over his sunken window, which looked out onto a small air shaft blessed with a plastic pot of dead geraniums. The midday winter light shone through it all as it would an icon seeming to warm the backs of his eye sockets, and he dreamt of a sort of person he knew he needed to meet, the sort of person he must one day meet, if, of course, it were not all too late. At the end of January, Vasily Nikolayevich's government dole would be exhausted. He did not know what he would do. Sleepless at night, he sorted through his options. He could try loitering in public men's rooms, and if that proved intolerable, absolutely intolerable, perhaps, but probably not, he could work for his father. January staggered on, one day bright and very cold, the next cold and very damp. Bouts of insomnia stretched into weeks without sleep. Vasily Nikoleyevich went off his food and embraced the internet with his whole being, whacking the keyboard as though his soul were chopping wood, and seeking in its infinite tunnels the sweet comforts of civilization's swift, certain, and well-deserved implosion. Housemates began spending weekends and evenings at any other location they could procure: the apartments of their sweethearts, the houses of their families, the futons of their employers. Rest or even a sensation of privacy was impossible, with their compatriots' angst vibrating up and down the house like electrified mice. Vasily Nikoleyevich stopped bathing as well. To fetch one's bicycle from below was a retch-inducing ordeal, and the already unkempt kitchen was becoming a gaseous hellhole. The Shotwell Street house convened a meeting, the latest of several, around the picnic tables of Cancun Taqueria. What was to be done? One could not simply move out. The controlled rent was too advantageous for the bicycle messengers, feminist fanzine editors, and violinists who lived there. The two remaining females of the group sulkily pointed out that they had no legal recourse for evicting the young man. The fellows, with a grudgingly admitted fondness for his intensity and integrity, were more brown-knitted and concerned. They brought up the strange case of Boris Mikhailovich Novikov, who, after seeing the documentary Shock Doctrine, had purchased property in Mendocino County. According to reports from townspeople, he now resembled a kind of upright coyote who spoke only of satellite surveillance and communion with extraterrestrial screech owls. Shrieks of otherworldly confusion borne by the wind to neighboring settlements emanated from his cabin throughout the night. It was said that Boris Mikhailovich had chewed off his left fourth finger entirely. It was then suggested, not for the first time, that what Vasily Nikoleyevich really needed was female companionship. But previous arrangements had produced disastrous results. Various young ladies had been introduced to him, and though they found him polite enough, intelligent, and certainly not without virtues, his topics of conversation were undiplomatic. No second dates occurred, but the young ladies could be seen the next week carrying the Tibetan Book of the Dead and making plans to live off the grid. "I think what scares us about Vasha," said Alexander Sergeyevich, who had attended the cathedral school with his dysfunctional housemate and was the one closest to him, "is that all his fears are well-founded. The tides are rising. The climate is changing. We are completely fucked." "But how is all his worry addressing the situation in the first place?" pondered Tatyana Prokofyevna, tugging idly at the sleeve of her LCD sound system t-shirt. "What does it achieve?" Alexander Sergeyevich drained the last of his Sierra Nevada pale ale and regarded his compatriots around the table. "The question is, at this late hour, whether anything can be achieved at all." The discussion migrated to Doc's clock and continued in this vein until approximately 1:30 a.m., involving 13 more vegetarian burritos, 30 more beers, 11 more joints, and 6 random reunions with old boyfriends and girlfriends. No course of action was ever decided. Vasily Nikoleyevich's eyes opened. He was not aware he had been asleep. Indeed, his memories of the past several days were so compressed and indistinguishable that he had to sit up and confirm his location. There was the foot of the bed, the desk with his laptop, the discarded department store clothing rack on wheels with his few items of clothing, the plastic milk crates with all his clipped articles and the bicycles. But he could not see the place where any of these things touched the floor. There was no floor. The shapes and traces of his home were all here and arranged in their order, but this was not his home. He had woken in some foreign kingdom that drew in thin black lines an outline of the home over the drop and span of a cold, powdery cosmos. There was the sensation, too, of loudness, of brightness. His senses recoiled, utterly overloaded. His body curled into a hot seizure, wicking shallow breath in and out of him. I am alone. He wished to say it aloud, to hear his own voice, but language was gone. A woman was with him, mother of pearl skin and coils of hair the tone of fluorescent rust. She was not in the room. She was simply all that there was. I am the archangel of chaos. You love me, you carry me. I am here. Keep walking, not long now. Vasily Nikoleyevich felt a sharp blow to the head, and all was darkness.